So, how do we go about translating our strategy and vision and mission into goals and objectives? There's two tools that companies use for that, that they can use for that. They might not use them, but they can. The first one is management by objectives, which you see on this slide, and the second one is a balanced scorecard, which we'll talk about later or after this. So, management by objectives, we call MBO, was conceived of by Peter Drucker, our management guru, if you remember from other conversations, a few decades ago, actually. And so the basic idea is that we want to have a systematic and organized approach that helps us increase organizational performance. So we can't just willy-nilly run around, make decisions, communicate, and take action in an organization. It ought to be systematic and organized. And we do this by aligning subordinate, meaning employee objectives throughout the organization with the overall top level goals that have been set by management. So what we are trying to do here in a gist or in summary is we want to ensure that people know what the organization is trying to do and what they are accomplishing or what they're doing that helps accomplish those objectives. So it's an alignment from the very top of the organization to the bottom of the organization. When we talk about management by objectives, we go from very broad level goals and objectives set at the top of the organization, and we cascade them down throughout the organization in a perfect line. That's the idea. So we have organizational level goals, and then we cascade, so through departments and through units and through teams, all the way down to the individual level contributor, to the subordinate or to the employee. And if we do that successfully, then the employee really should know what they're doing on a Tuesday afternoon, and that thing that they're doing on a Tuesday afternoon is actually contributing to strategy. It's making us competitive as an organization, it's making us successful, it's making us profitable because we're doing the right thing that the organization has said, this is what we're going to do. However, in organizations, because measurement is very tricky, that doesn't always happen. So a lot of the time we are wishing for A, but we are rewarding for B. So while we want one thing to happen, we are actually measuring something different without even really knowing that. And that's what this slide addresses a little bit. So there was an individual, very bright academic, his last name was Kerr, Stephen Kerr, and in 1975 he wrote an article. I often give it to my MBA students to read. It's called On the Folly of Rewarding for A while Wishing for B. And so here you see some examples. In healthcare, we have pay for service facilities. Doctors are not flat salaried. So what they do is perhaps they order unnecessary tests and procedures. And so that's wasteful and it costs too much money, but that's the reward system that's in place. For education, while society hopes that professors will be the best teachers ever, a lot of our universities really just reward for publications and grant money. And so they don't really care about what the education for our students look like. So they reward for research and they say they want to have good teachers. So there's a controversy or a misalignment there. In sports, many coaches and professional sports owners, they preach the value of teamwork, working together, helping each other. Most of the rewards are individual players. Yep. And in business, we want to be able to provide honest feedback. Companies, managers encourage it, but giving somebody bad news is typically not viewed favorably. Secondly, after MBO, management by objectives, we have the balanced scorecard. This was thought of by Kaplan and Norton, and it's been around for a few decades now as well. So the balanced scorecard is a framework that was designed to translate mission and vision and strategy into goals and objectives We talked about that, right? That's what all of these or both of these are trying to do. And we're trying to monitor the organization's performance in terms of how are we achieving those goals. So the idea is that a lot of the time companies are only looking at this box right here. We are only looking at the financial performance, and it's getting too much weight in terms of everything else that needs to happen. So the balance scorecard is trying to balance multiple domains that have value for the organization and that makes the succession valuable. So we clearly have financial measures that will always be there. We can also have something called internal business process measures. For instance, speed at serving the customer, time it takes to create a new product and get it to market. All of these are internal business processes that focus on efficiency. Okay, financials, return on assets, stock price, for instance. Then we also have customer measures, right? Do we really care about our customers? Number of new customers, number of repeat customers, percentage of those, right? Customer traction and satisfaction, how do you measure that? And also, the learning culture, the learning organization. How about some learning and growth measures? Average number of new skills learned by employee every year. Much more useful measure than number of hours trained. This relate to the future and emphasize that employee learning is often more important than formal training. Okay. So, balance scorecard dimensions, we already talked about them. On the right side of this screen, you have those 4 measures again that we just talked about, with some examples that are not that we didn't cover. So you get the customers, you get the learning and growth, you get the internal business processes, you have the financial performance, some examples. And then we are saying here on the left side is that we can either have lagging measures or leading measures, lagging indicators or leading indicators. So lagging, they are after the fact. They are output oriented. So a lagging indicator is always easier because they have happened. So they are easy to measure, but it's hard to influence because they already happened. So what are you going to do about it? So it's historical data. Clearly, it's useful for some stuff and we can use it to predict future, but it's not going to be a perfect prediction because we don't know what the future is going to look like exactly, right? At the opposite is the leading indicators, right? So on the other hand, opposite from lagging, they are input oriented. So that's the thing that goes into something. So here they're hard to measure and they're easy to influence. So a thought project for you is to think about what are some lagging and leading indicators. And if you don't know examples of that, I encourage you to right now pause the video and do some Googling around lagging and leading indicators. Or use your brain. Google brain, good stuff. All right, so how do we make this happen in reality? How do we translate the balance scorecard into practice? So there's 4 processes we can use. 2 are listed on this slide, and 2 on the next. So the first one is to translate the vision. So by having measurements, managers are now forced to come to agreement on what metrics we should be using for taking our visions, which tend to be abstract and lofty, and making them into everyday realities. And we have to come to agreement, so we have consistency. Second, communication and linking. When a scorecard is disseminated to others within the organization, that strategy becomes a tool, which is useful, right? It's a tool for everybody. So as the high-level scorecard cascades from the top of the organization down through the organization, down to individual business units, these overarching organizational strategic objectives and measures are now translated into objectives and measures that are appropriate for each group. So there is some work going from this large-scale strategic to individual. There's work there. And many organizations have huge strategic planning units, teams that do this work for the organization. Individual employees now understand how their own productivity on a Tuesday afternoon supports the overall strategy. And that's the goal. Boom, right there. Third, business planning, right? I just said this. So most companies have separate procedures on units that do strategic planning and budgeting because it's such a big job. And creating a balanced scorecard forces these companies to integrate that financial budgets support strategic goals because we want to align our resources so we can meet our goals. Some people suggest that strategic planning is literally just an allocation of resources. We have resources in the organization. Who gets to use them? Well, the people that can make sure the goals are met. So we're integrating both the two functions of budgets and goals. After agreeing on performance measures for the 4 scorecard perspectives, companies identify the most influential drivers, the things that will make it happen, the drivers of the desired outcomes, and then set milestones. You have to have the small wins, right? You can't just wait till the end. So you set milestones for assessing the progress that they make with these drivers. Lastly is feedback and learning. So by supplying a mechanism for strategic feedback and review, it helps foster kind of learning that we miss in many organizations, which is to the ability to reflect on inferences and adjust theories about cause and effect relationships. Because if we have measures now, they will help us do that. All right, that's it for MBO as well as balanced scorecard. So don't forget to also read the texts that come with these PowerPoints for full and complete explanations. And as always, you can let me know if you have any questions. Thank you. See you soon.